I want you to think of a ruthless organization, and with that organization, there has to be somebody at the top. I mean, we're talking Al Capone, Darth Vader, the bad guys in the Lego movie. But one thing about the worst kind of leaders, there's no better example than the man who has led the Patriots for many years, and that man, of course, is Bill Belichick. At least with teams like the Yankees, they would beat up on other big market teams, like the Red Sox or the Dodgers. But that is not the Patriots' way. I mean, they'll beat up on the Jets, the Dolphins, even the poor Bills. There is no end to what they will do for a victory. It just leaves you with a lot of questions, like, how is Tom Brady still playing? Where do they get their no-name skill players? And why doesn't Bill Belichick say anything in these press conferences? What's he hiding? They'll go to no ends to get some victories. I mean, they've even been having white players play skill positions. Truly outrageous. They don't play by the rules. No, really, they don't play by the rules. Several teams have tried to stop them, but to no avail. Rex Ryan was actually considered a pretty competent head coach before he faced off against them. Now, he's a joke. And for the biggest man to get in their way, well, he suffered a fate worse than death. Playing for the New York Football Giants. Hello and welcome to the Jackson Kruger Sports Podcast. This is my first time doing this. I am very excited to be doing this. I hope you guys enjoyed that little serial parody thing I had going on in the beginning. I had fun making that. I might do it again if I do more of these podcasts, which hopefully I will. And so just so you guys know, the way this is going to work for this episode is I'm simply just going to try to talk about every single thing that I think is going to happen throughout the 2019 season. So there's several ways I'm going to do that. The first thing I'm going to do is go through each team, and I'm going to give each team a ranking. And there's four total, it's not really a rank, it's more, there's four tiers, I would say. So the way it works is the top tier is a championship contender. And so, of course, championship contender, you can figure that out. That's a team that's going to be competing for the championship. That would be the New England Patriots, or even like the Los Angeles Rams last year. You got the Saints last year. So those kind of tier teams, that's who I would consider to be a championship caliber team. Basically, my thought is, if you make the conference championship, then you are in the championship caliber tier. That's kind of the way my mindset is for that kind of thing. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that there will only be 4 championship caliber teams. I mean, like, just think about 2 years ago when there was the Saints and the Vikings who squared off in that divisional round matchup. Well, in my opinion, those are both championship caliber teams. They just happen to have to play each other before getting to the conference championship. But, you know, if the Saints did end up winning that game, if there wasn't the Minnesota Miracle, who knows, maybe they do go on to win the Super Bowl that year. Granted, probably not. I mean, the Eagles were really tough that year, but you know what I mean. Then the second tier is just the playoff contender. I think this is going to be a lot more teams are going to go in either this tier or the third tier. And the reason why I think that there's going to be a lot of teams in this one is because I think there's a lot of teams that could contend for the playoffs. You know, I think that, like, take the Steelers, for example, this year, or the Browns, or the Ravens, you know, all those teams. Those are kind of playoff contender teams. Where are they going to be contending for the championship? Well, I don't know. I definitely wouldn't say definitely yes at this point. They might be able to contend. They might not. I just don't know. However, I do feel pretty confident they will be contending for at least a playoff spot, if nothing else. So that's kind of the second tier. And then the third tier is going to simply be the competent losers tier. And what I mean by this is, think the New York Giants from last year. Were they a great team? No. But were they competitive in certain games that maybe they shouldn't be competitive in? Yeah, they were. They were definitely competitive in certain games. I think that they were a solid team, and that's kind of my competent losers. It's a team that, well, yes, really any team could potentially win on any given Sunday. Really, that's not really the way it works. However, in my opinion, for a competent loser, that's a team that could beat anybody else on any given Sunday. That's maybe the Buffalo Bills last year. Not a great team, but could beat anybody on any given Sunday. So that's kind of my first 3 tiers, and then my fourth tier is going to be simply, this is the team that is the perceived easy W team. That's that tier. You know, it's a team that when you're going through the schedule and when you're seeing who you play next year, they're one of those teams that you kind of say, that should be a win. So last year, this was the Arizona Cardinals. When you went up against the Cardinals, you said, that should absolutely be a win. I mean, unless you're the 49ers, because for whatever reason, they got swept by them. But for the most part, you look at that team and you would say, you know what, we absolutely should win that football game. It also doesn't always work out that way, but at least going into the game, you think it's going to be an easy win. That's why it's the perceived easy win. So those are kind of the 4 tiers I'm going to be breaking every team into. And then I'm also going to just simply rank each team in their division. I'm not going to be doing like a prediction on how I think they'll do throughout the season. Like, I won't be saying I think this team will go 10-6 or whatever. Just simply because that's really hard to predict. I mean, if one field goal goes the wrong way, well, then you lose a game that maybe you should have won, or you win a game maybe you should have lost. So the actual record is kind of tough to predict. So that's why I kind of like these tiers. And so then, so for the NFC South, for example, I'll just rank them 4-1. And then what I'm going to do is I'll have all 8 division winners. So those 8 teams will make the playoffs. I will also simply just be going over which teams I think will make the wild card. And then I will have the 12 teams that are going to be in the playoffs. So from there, I'll have my playoff bracket. And from that point, I can simply just say who I think is going to win each game and who's going to eventually win the Super Bowl. And also just for fun, I'll say who I think is going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year. You know, all of those just fun, whatever, statistics. That's what I'll be doing. So yeah, that's the schedule for this video. That's the way this is supposed to work. That's how I think this podcast will work. I guess it's not a video, it's a podcast. That might take me a second. I'm used to saying video. I might say video instead of podcast a couple of times. But yeah, so that's how I plan to make this podcast work. And also, just so you guys know, just a little housekeeping. I know some people kind of prefer to actually listen to a podcast like while they're running or while they're working out at the gym or something, as opposed to just having it on in a tab in the background. So if that's something you're interested in, I have a download feed available. It's on my website, which I have the website link in the description in this video below. So you can click on the website. The website's jacksonkriegersports.com. So if you're interested in getting the download, that's all you have to do. And yeah, so I say let's just jump into this, and we'll start things off with the NFC South, and we'll start things off with a team that kind of got screwed out of the NFC Championship game. It is fair to say, and that's the New Orleans Saints. Listen, you can't get around it. The fact of the matter is, if one call didn't go their way, they would have almost definitely gone to the Super Bowl. They would have been in a great position to make the Super Bowl at that point. I believe they would have been up 3 with like 30 seconds left. It would have just been a cakewalk at that point. You never know, but it seems very likely that they would have been able to go on and at least get to the Super Bowl. Who knows if they win it. Now, this year, I actually think that they should still be looking pretty good this year. They're pretty close to the same team. I think the one worry a lot of people do have is just with Drew Brees. Will he be able to be successful? I would assume yes, but again, his age, it is a concern. I did actually say in my top 40 quarterback rankings, which is rankings of not necessarily who I think is just the most talented, but also who would I rather have in the 2019 season. I put him at number 4 on that list, just because A, he's a very talented guy, and B, I can't really put him too much higher just simply because I'm a little bit worried about his age, but I'm not that worried about his age. I think he should still be okay. And I also just think that with his system, the way that he's always played, you don't necessarily need to be making these 50-yard bombs. It helps, of course, but it's not necessarily a necessity, so to speak. So in terms of Brees, I wouldn't worry at all. Wide receivers, you got Michael Thomas. We all know about Alvin Kamara. Jared Cook's an interesting guy. Jared Cook is definitely a guy who I could see being a key factor in this offense. Because one of the real ways teams took away their offense last year was really just double team Michael Thomas and put a defensive back on Kamara. Because if you do that, well, now who else do the New Orleans Saints have? They have Michael Thomas and then Kamara. And one of the things I did say in actually a video about them was kind of Drew Brees is the type of guy who can throw guys open. So even if you don't necessarily have the best number 2 receiver, he can kind of turn them into a solid number 2 receiver. But I think actually having an additional threat like Jared Cook, who can be effective in the receiving game, could really help them. They also have a top 10 offensive line, so, they have that going for them. And I think their defense is really good. Their run defense is really good. Maybe a top 5 run defense. And their secondary is solid. Their secondary is mediocre. Marshawn Lattimore, we all know what he can do, although I do have to say he kind of took a step back last year as opposed to a step forward. Not that he was bad in 2018, but he was so good in 2017 as a rookie. I think we were all kind of hoping, well, I wasn't hoping, I'm a Bucs fan, but if you're a fan of football, you were hoping that he could really blossom into not just a true number 1 corner, but maybe even a potentially all-time great corner. That might have been just a bit too optimistic, but he still had a solid 2018 season, and hopefully he could improve and have an even better 2019 season if you are a Saints fan. So yeah, Saints, they're a championship contender. Not really too much to talk about there. We all know they're a championship contender. They were so close to making it to the Super Bowl last year. Moving on to the second team on this list, and that is my favorite team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And honestly, there's a lot to talk about with this team, and they're kind of just a weird team. I'm not sure if there's any team quite like this team. For one thing, this is a team that actually led the league in passing yards last year. They threw for over 5,000 yards last year. There were 3 teams that did that. It was the Steelers and the Chiefs, obviously, because both of their 2 starting quarterbacks did. But also, the combination of Fitzmagic and also Jameis, they threw for over 5,000 yards, and they moved the ball downfield, no doubt about it. Now, a percentage of that was just their great wide receivers and tight ends. They did lose Deshaun Jackson and Adam Humphries. I'm not really too worried about Deshaun Jackson, but I do think Adam Humphries could hurt. You never know, though, because it also opens up the door for Chris Godwin, who we expect to be very good. And also, of course, the Bruce Arians addition is definitely going to help them. I think that the key weakness, people are saying this is the boom or bust year for Jameis. I actually don't see it that way. I think he kind of is what he is, and I'm personally kind of from the school of thought of just kind of take the leash off him and just sort of see what he can do. Let him be Brett Favre out there. That's kind of my school of thought. I mean, listen, this guy is not going to be Tom Brady. He's just not that type of player. But he can make some great throws if you kind of take the leash off him. I think Cutter kind of half had the leash off him, half didn't, and that was just kind of tough for Jameis to play his game. But you also have some real concerns on that offensive side of the ball, even though they did move the ball so well last year. Specifically with the running game, I mean, they might have the worst backfield in the NFL. And again, nothing against some of these guys like Peyton Barber. I think he's a fine role player, but that's really all he is. He shouldn't be a starter. They shouldn't be asking him to be a starter. That's not fair to him, really. Also, O-line's not great. I mean, outside of Ali Marpet, you got a couple. I mean, Jensen's alright, but they have some key holes. I didn't love signing Donovan Smith to that big deal, and so that's going to be a real concern. And another real concern is going to be the defense. I mean, listen, this defense was borderline historically bad last year. It was just atrocious at times. I do really like some of the moves they made on defense, but again, they've got a lot of rookies. Rookies tend to take time to develop. I don't think the secondary or defense is going to be very good. So while I don't quite see them just being a completely garbage team, I am going to put them in as competent losers. I think that's a very solid category for them. I kind of think this is going to be like the Denver Broncos last year, where, the Denver Broncos, they beat the Steelers and they beat some teams that you're just like, I think they beat the Chargers. They either beat the Chargers or came close to beating the Chargers. I can't remember. But they played the Chargers tough. They had some really good games, and then they just get blown out by the 49ers. That was kind of the team they were last year. So I think that's kind of, I could see that being the Bucs this year. Of like, they'll win a couple of games. Like, they'll probably beat the Saints twice or something. I mean, they beat the Saints once last year and almost beat them twice, actually. So they'll probably do something like that, where they'll beat the Saints twice, but then lose to, like, the Cardinals or something. I feel like that's very much how I see the Bucs doing. So that's kind of where I have them at. Now let's move on to the Carolina Panthers. And listen, this Carolina Panthers team is, again, they're one of those teams that, like the Bucs, are very different than a lot of other teams. Largely just because of Cam Newton as quarterback, they're going to look very different than a lot of other teams. I think Cam Newton should be good. The only worry I would have is just with the injury. Will he get back to 100%? But I actually think he will. I think he will. So I'll say that Cam Newton, I'm not too worried about him. They actually have maybe the best receiving core that they've ever had with Cam Newton, which is saying something because I don't think this receiving core is that great, but at least it's not garbage like it has been. I also like McCaffrey. I'm a little concerned about Greg Olson's age, but they have probably a top 10 offensive line. So on the offensive side of the ball, I'm not really too worried about them. I think they'll put up points. I think the real question is going to be with their defense. And listen, they put a lot of effort into their front seven. They trying to make sure they can stop the opposing team's run. However, I'm just not sold on their secondary. Their secondary still worries me a lot. That's kind of my biggest concern about the Panthers. So that's kind of why I'm going to put them in. I think they'll be a playoff contender. I do not think they will be a championship contender. That's where I have them at. And now let's move on to the fourth and final team of this division, and that is going to be the Atlanta Falcons. And listen, with the Falcons, it all starts with Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan, I put him as a top 5 quarterback in the league. I think he's a very talented guy. I think he's often underrated. And listen, it's not just Matt Ryan. I mean, they have debatably the best wide receiving duo in the league. I mean, you got, of course, Julio Jones, debatably the best receiver in the league. I mean, if he's not the best receiver in the league, he's in the conversation. There's no doubt about that in my mind. But then you also have a guy like Calvin Ridley, who I think can definitely have a breakout season. I mean, I drafted the guy in fantasy last year. That's how convinced I am he could be a very solid contributor. And he's also just a good red zone threat. So I think that can really, really help them out a lot. He had a lot of touchdowns last year. So I like the receiving core a lot. And I think we could see kind of a bounce back season for Devonta Freeman. I think he's a guy a lot of people are sleeping on, but I think he's still a very solid number one running back option for them. And even tight ends, Austin Hooper's good. The real concern I have with their offense is their offensive line. I do know that they did draft 2 rookie offensive linemen in the first round. So who knows? Maybe that could really bolster their offensive line. It is a concern I do have with them. But also, I just look at how much points they put up and how much yards they put up last year with a bad offensive line. I'm not really too worried about their own line, just simply because I know this is a team that can put up points. I am not concerned about them being able to put up points. Now, moving on to their defense, I think that their secondary is good. I am not so sold on their run defense. So that's kind of why I can't put them in a championship caliber defense. I think even their secondary is just fine. I think their defense is not. To me, this is not a championship contender team. They might, again, you never know. So much changes in the NFL. That's why we love the NFL. But yeah, I mean, I can't justify putting them as a championship contender, but I can justify putting them as a playoff contender. So that's where I'm going to have them. So just a quick recap of that division. Saints are the one championship contender, so obviously they're number 1. Tampa Bay is the one competent losers, so they're obviously number 4. Now, between Atlanta and Carolina, you could really go either way here, but I'll go Atlanta number 2 and Carolina number 3. But again, I think they're both I think they're both playoff contenders. I can see either one of them actually doing some serious damage in 2019. I'm probably going to make a couple of mistakes for a first podcast. Bear with me. All right. Moving on to the second division, that is the NFC East, and that, of course, all starts with the Dallas Cowboys, who everybody loves talking about. And I mean, listen, when you talk about the Cowboys, there really is the big 3, so to speak. You got Dak, you got Zeke, and you got Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper, for me, is interesting just because, really, I mean, he's so inconsistent. He'll get 200 yards and 3 touchdowns one game, and then he'll get 3 catches for 30 yards the next game. And that's something that's been with him, not just with Dallas, but also with the Raiders. So he's the kind of guy where it's like, if he can just be good Amari Cooper every game, this is the guy who could be a true number 1 receiver. He could be an elite level receiver. But he hasn't shown that he can be that guy just yet, in my opinion. Now, on the other hand, though, Ezekiel Elliott absolutely has shown he can be that guy. Ezekiel Elliott is a tremendous talent. I personally, just in terms of the holdout, I think he'll play. I think there's even been reports that they're already in contract talk. I can't imagine he doesn't play. I mean, the idea that he'll hold out, maybe he'll hold out 6 games, but I think this is the team that could end up making the playoffs anyways, and I think he'll be there for, at the very least, he'll be there for the final 10 games and playoffs if necessary. And then, of course, Dak Prescott, hopefully he'll just have that big jump next year. We don't know, but we've kind of been waiting for him to have a big jump in a lot of ways. So hopefully for Dallas Cowboys fans, he will be able to do that. Tight end is interesting for me, just simply because they went back and they got Jason Witten out of retirement, out of the Monday Night Football booth. And listen, I actually don't think Jason Witten I don't think that's a nothing move. Like, Jason Witten didn't retire because he couldn't play anymore. Jason Witten actually retired so he could be in the Monday Night Football booth. That didn't really work out too well. He was kind of heavily criticized. So now he's just going to go back and try to play football again. And listen, I think there actually could be something to that. I think he actually could add some value. And also, just as we all know, their offensive line, their defense, that's all good. One of the best offensive lines in the league and a very good defense. Honestly, one of the best defenses in the league. So that's kind of where I have some trouble with them. I mean, this is a team without a lot of weaknesses. I mean, maybe you could say tight end. We don't know about Jason Witten. I mean, I think he'll be a contributor. I don't think he'll be where he was at one point in his career. I also, I'm not sold on their wide receiving grouping outside of Amari Cooper, and even with Amari Cooper, honestly. I think Cooper is great. I do think that Dak kind of forced him to the ball a little bit too much. And part of this might have been because they didn't have anyone else open. So there is something to that. They're a tough team to really place. I think I'm going to say that they are a playoff contender, not a championship contender. That's where I have them right now. I feel like they're pretty much the same team they were last year, so that's why I have them there. They were a playoff contender, not a championship contender in 2018. I think that's where it'll be in 2019. But again, who knows? They could end up having some great run, so we'll just have to wait and see. Moving on to the second team in this division, that is the Washington Redskins. The quarterback position is weird with them because it appears as though Case Keenum will be their starter. However, I'm not so sold on Case Keenum. I mean, Case Keenum is a fine player, but we all kind of know where he's at. He's just that. He's a fine player, and that's kind of it. So I personally, it's tough for me. These situations are always tough for me because I feel like on one hand, the best way to learn is to do something. So for Dwayne Haskins, the best way for him to be a better quarterback is for him to play quarterback at the NFL level. I think that would help him. But at the same time, they feel like they want to let him sit for a second, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see how that goes. You also got, in terms of the skill positions, that's kind of where they're a little bit shaky. I mean, you got Jordan Reed, who is great, but he can never stay healthy. You got Darius Geis, who is a solid player, but we literally have never seen him take a snap yet. I mean, he was hurt all of last year. So I think he'll be good, but again, who knows? That's a question mark. The receivers, the receivers are a question mark. We know that. Even they know that. Even they're saying, yeah, we might be the weakness of this team. I mean, again, I don't want to bash on the guys, but it's a weakness and it's an unknown as of right now. Their O-line is good. It's not great, but it's good. I would like it better with Trent Williams in their offensive line because I think he's a very talented player. But Donald Penn is he is a former Pro Bowler. Last we've seen of him, he was fine. I hope he'll still be fine for the Redskins, but I think he'll still at least be an okay contributor. And then, again, their defense is kind of just mediocre. I mean, I think that Landon Collins could help their secondary, which isn't the best, but the run defense was pretty good last year. The run defense was borderline top 10, but at least on the top half of teams. So, as a whole, I would say the Redskins are pretty good. And also, that's quite the turnaround, by the way, to have a better-than-average run defense when 2 years ago they were the worst in the league. I think you have to give a lot of credit to Payne for that one. I think he's definitely really helped them in a lot of ways. So, for the Redskins, I'm a little bit conflicted. I actually don't think that this talent level is atrocious necessarily, but I definitely don't think they're going to be contending for the playoffs or for a championship. I do think I'm kind of conflicted between are they an easy W or are they just competent losers, but I don't think that they're a team that you will look at them and say, we'll definitely beat this team. I think you'll look at them and say, we should beat this team, but not definitely. So that's why I will say they will be the competent losers next year. And now let's move on to the Eagles. And listen, this Eagles team is a team people are really hyping up. There's some logic for it. I mean, listen, just 2 years ago, this is the team that won the Super Bowl without Carson Wentz, who's their quarterback. So you definitely would think that this is the team that could have a lot of success. I think they have a lot of good receivers. They might not necessarily have like the Julio Jones type that some other teams do, but Alshon Jeffrey's good and a number one receiver. They have a lot of good receivers, and they have a lot of good tight ends too. I mean, so they're looking okay in that position. Obviously, Zach Ertz is a top tier tight end, probably a top 3, or at least a top 5, no doubt about it. And then you also have Dallas Goedert behind him, who is good. You have a lot of running backs. I don't know which one of the running backs they will give the lion's share of their carries to, but you got a lot of them. So you would think that at least one of them could break out and be a solid running back number 1 for them. They also have debatably the best offensive line in football. So on the offensive side of the ball, I really like this Eagles team. I think that Carson Wentz is good. I think that he kind of got a little bit overrated in his MVP caliber season, but I also think he got kind of underrated after last season. I didn't think he was that bad last season. So I had him in my top 40 quarterback rankings. I had him at number 16. That's kind of around where I have him. And that was also partially just due to injuries. He probably would have been higher if it wasn't for injuries. So on offense, I like the Eagles team a lot. On defense, I have one major question mark, and that is in the secondary. Their secondary was not good last year. It was very banged up, but it still wasn't very good. And on paper, I'm still not sure how excited I am going to be for that Eagles secondary. So, just thinking about it, I think I would give the Eagles a playoff contender. I'm not going to be giving them a championship contender. I know that'll surprise some people, but that's where I'm going to put them. And last but not least, everyone's favorite team, the New York Football Giants. When you talk about a team that got some heat last off-season, there's no doubt about it. New York Giants were number 1. Specifically with the Daniel Jones pick, I have never seen a rookie get trashed more than Daniel Jones. Maybe you can find some other examples, but I mean, man. I've kind of been from the school, like, I don't think Eli Manning is that bad, so this is kind of a similar situation to the Redskins in a lot of ways, where I do think that it's kind of tough. Do you go with a decent quarterback who's probably not your future, or do you go with a guy who should be your future? Personally, again, it's up for debate. I mean, but either way, it seems like the Giants will not be starting Daniel Jones, at least not right away. I think their wide receiving grouping is actually very underrated. I know they don't have like that true number 1 receiver, but I think they're kind of a middle of the pack just because of all the weapons they do have. They have Golden Tate, they have Sterling Shepard. Yes, neither of those 2 guys are Julio Jones, but in my opinion, you don't necessarily need a Julio Jones to have success. You can have success with 2 solid receivers, in my opinion. Their running back situation is just fantastic. They have maybe the best running back in the league already going into his 2nd year. That is Saquon Barkley. I love Saquon Barkley. I think he's just such a game changer in so many ways. What was it? I believe it was Troy Aikman who was saying, I've never seen somebody have more impressive 2-yard runs. You know, like he'll make so many guys miss just to get 2 yards. He's ridiculous, and their offensive line much improved this season. I think that it's kind of slowly getting better. It was atrocious 2 years ago. It was bad last year, and I think it's getting too good this year. It was actually mediocre towards the end of last season, and I would actually say that's where I think they'll be this year, is mediocre. Also, of course, you can't forget about Evan Ingram, one of the better young tight ends in the league. Defense is actually where I had the problem with the Giants. I don't think their offense is that bad. I do think their defense is bad. I think their offense will put up some points, but I also don't think their offense can keep them in the games if their defense gives up 35 points. I don't know if this is an offense that can score 30 points a game. I just don't. And honestly, in today's NFL, if you have a bad defense, that's what you have to do if you're going to win. So that's kind of where I'm struggling with the Giants. That is why I will also say they will be competent losers once again this season. So yeah, for that division, I actually have two that are in two different categories. So at first I have the Redskins and the Giants, who are both going to be competent losers in my opinion. And I really do actually struggle with this in a lot of ways. I think they're actually very similar teams in a lot of ways. I think that both teams actually have some talent in certain situations, but to me, I'm going to put the Giants ahead of the Redskins just because I don't love the Redskins' wide receiving situation. I think the Giants have a much better running back situation, obviously, with Saquon Barkley. And I see their quarterback position as kind of a push just simply because, well, I do like Haskins a lot. I think that Jones is a little bit more NFL ready, and also neither one of those two guys will be starting for their assigned teams. So that's where I'm going to have them. I'm going to have the Redskins at number 4, and I'm going to have the Giants at number 3. Then between the Eagles and the Cowboys, I'm going to have the Cowboys at 2. I'm going to have the Eagles winning the division. And the reason why I'm having the Eagles win the division is just I think that they're a more talented team on offense, even if their defense isn't quite as good. I think that their offensive line, I think you can make an argument these are the two best offensive lines in the league. I think the Eagles' offensive line is a little better. I think the Eagles have more receivers that can actually do things. I think the Cowboys only having one good receiver could definitely hurt them. I do like the Cowboys running back. I like Ezekiel Elliott a lot better than I like the Eagles' kind of plethora of running backs. But I think just because the Eagles have so many, one of them or at least a couple of them will be able to not necessarily be as good as Ezekiel Elliott, but at least hold their own. So again, no doubt about it, the secondary of the Eagles is a problem, but I still have them winning that division. Also, moving on to the NFC West, it all starts with the Cardinals, and the Cardinals, I'm just going to say it right off the bat, they are a team that is going to be a perceived easy W. I mean, they have a new head coach where there is some question marks about him. I'm kind of from the school of thought of, I don't want to sit here and say a new head coach is going to be good or bad, just because how do we really know? I mean, how often do we see a head coach that we think is going to suck end up doing well? I think famously, Doug Peterson was trashed when he first became the Eagles head coach. I think Eagles fans are saying, you know what, we're kind of glad we have you right now, largely due to a Super Bowl ring. So, Cliff Kingsbury, yes, I know he didn't have a winning record in college, but at the same time, that doesn't necessarily mean that you won't be able to have success in the NFL. So, we'll have to wait and see a little bit for that. However, I do think we'll have to wait more than 1 year. While I do like Kyler Murray, I'm not sure how much of an upgrade he'll be from Josh Rosen just in a rookie season. Rookies take time to develop. And when you also look at just the lack of talent around them, debatably the worst offensive line in the league. Bad tight end situation. I like David Johnson, but I don't know if he can save the whole system. I also just don't know about the wide receiving group. Larry Fitzgerald is good. I like Christian Kirk, but again, Fitzgerald is getting up there. So on offense, there's a severe lack of talent surrounding Murray, and that's why I think this is going to be a bad team next year. But I could be wrong. They did try to make some moves in the offensive line situation. I don't think they made enough, in my opinion. I think they should have tried to address it through the draft. But it was also tough because there wasn't really a lot of great draft offensive linemen in the second round. Personally, I probably still would have gone with Jawan Taylor with that pick in the second round. But either way, their secondary is very good, although injured and suspended. So that's kind of, when healthy, it's very good. But again, a concern just because they won't all be out there for all 16 games. And then the run defense, not really too great. Chandler Jones is great, but other than that, they're in some trouble next year. I'm trying not to be too mean, but they know where they're at. They're rebuilding. They're a rebuilding team. They're going to be a perceived easy W. Okay, so moving on from a perceived easy W to a team that had a lot of W's last year, made it all the way to the Super Bowl. That is the Los Angeles Rams. And listen, again, this is a good team. I mean, they won a lot of games last year. They went to the Super Bowl. This is obviously a very good team. It's not like they lost any key pieces either. Jared Goff is good, but there definitely is that concern about Goff. And the concern is the playbook out now? Will people know this is how you beat Jared Goff? I mean, listen, there were several times last year where he got shut down. Not just the Super Bowl. He got shut down against Chicago. He got kind of shut down against Detroit. They weren't able to actually pull that one off, but they were at least able to slow him down. I mean, let's just be honest. That is a real concern. We can't deny that. That is absolutely a real concern that I do have about them. You also have, going on to wide receivers, they have a great wide receiving group. I mean, Cooper Kupp, Brandon Cooks, and also Robert Woods. As Troy Aikman would say, Robert Woods, the best wide receiver in the NFL. That should be fine. People are worried about Todd Gurley. I am not worried about Todd Gurley. I think that he will be very good. Maybe they won't have him have as much carries, but at least in terms of the long term, I think if they make the playoffs, which I believe they will, then I personally think that Todd Gurley, at least by that point, should be healthy. I do think they're not going to have him run as much early on in the season. I think they'll kind of pace him out a little bit more. I think they've learned their lesson from last year. Maybe they haven't, I don't know. But that's what I think. And again, on offense, there's no real weakness. Tight end is good. Offensive line is good. And of course, quarterback, wide receiving, that's just great. Todd Gurley, when healthy, is great. And then there's obviously Sean McVay, who knows how to use guys to their strengths. So on offense, I am not too worried. I am interested to see just how Sean McVay will react. As last season, he kind of had the mindset of, we do what we do, you guys try to beat us. They kind of came out in every formation. Now, they would still innovate and try new things, but they would get creative. But they would kind of start everything from one formation. It'll be interesting to see if that's what they continue to do next year. In terms of their defense, I like their secondary. I hate their front seven outside of Aaron Donald. I mean, they have some guys on the front seven, but as a whole, that is the concern of this team, is their run defense, I think. Their front seven, Aaron Donald is great, but how great is that entire grouping? I just don't know. And that's important. Having guys who can work together is important in the running game. In the passing game, you can kind of get away with just one or two guys being very good. Running game, not so much. That is my concern, but I mean, they were just in the Super Bowl last year. They're a championship contender, in my opinion. Moving on to the 49ers. The 49ers are such a fascinating team. I mean, there's so many things that I could be talking about here. I think their running back situation is crazy with all of the running backs they have. They have George Kittle, dominant tight end last year. Could be a dominant tight end once again. They have a lot of good young receivers that I really like to see. I'm really looking forward to seeing how they will do. And of course, there's Jimmy Garoppolo, who, despite the fact that I really like him, I have never seen him play a full season. He is yet to be healthy for a full season. I am really hoping this could be the year he is healthy. I think their O-line is fine. I would put it middle of the pack. But offensively, I like this 49ers team. I think on offense, they will put up points, assuming they stay healthy, which is not always a totally safe assumption. I mean, listen, they do have some injury histories, not just on offense, but on defense. That is something that I would be concerned about. However, as a whole, I think their offense is going to be good. But, of course, their offense is not the only thing that's going to be on the football field. There is also defense, and their defense has some question marks. I mean, listen, I think that they did a lot to try to improve the defense from free agency. That can work from time to time. I think we remember a few years ago in the first Ben McAdoo season when the Giants kind of bought players through free agency. It can be good for the short term, so it could be good for 2019. I don't think it's a long-term option. You do have to build through the draft, but I also think that is kind of what they're doing. They're sort of just trying to fast-track the rebuild a little bit, which can work. I mean, it kind of worked for the Rams to a large degree. I think that Quan Alexander could have a huge impact. I think guys like Jason Verrett could have a huge impact. Dee Ford, they've definitely improved their defense a lot through free agency. Defense was not good last year. They have improved it this year. My biggest concern about them is the safety position. I don't know if I love their safety position. So, for that reason, I'm actually a little bit conflicted, but I am going to say that the 49ers I'm going to say that they're playoff contenders. That's where I'm going to go with there. I do think that they could contend for a postseason berth. And from that point on, let's move over to the Seattle Seahawks, who did have a playoff berth. They were a wildcard team last year. And they've added Jadeveon Clowney, who I actually think could be a huge benefit to their system. I will be making a video on that. Again, I've been on vacation, basically. I'm still working on my vacation. It's not really a vacation. I'm staying with family, but it's kind of a vacation. But anyways, that's when the Clowney news broke, so I'm going to try to get a video out. Maybe Thursday or Friday is when it'll be out. But yeah, plan on putting that out. But anyways, so yeah, So I do really like this Seattle Seahawks team. I think they're kind of that team where maybe they don't necessarily have some stars, but although they did just add Clowney, as a whole, they don't have a ton of stars, but they don't have a ton of weaknesses either. I like their defense. I like their defense a lot. I think that maybe they don't necessarily have the most talented players at every position, but they do have talent at every position, and that's kind of important in a defense. In terms of offense, listen, their offensive line has been the best Russell Wilson has ever had to deal with because it's only a bottom 10 offensive line as opposed to a bottom 3 offensive line. So that's a huge benefit for him. And of course, Russell Wilson, one of the better quarterbacks in the league. I put him at the 6th best quarterback in the league. So he should be fine. I do wonder if the Doug Baldwin retirement could hurt them. I'm also, I like their receiving core without Doug Baldwin, but I don't love it. It's, again, kind of middle of the road, maybe a little bit lower than middle of the road. And the running game, it's fine. But, again, as a whole, I think that this is the kind of team that's built around, we're going to be decent at everything and then have Russell Wilson. That's kind of the way our team is going to work. And they also added Clowney, who could kind of fill up that Frank Clark-sized hole that has been left. So, I like the Seattle Seahawks, and I will also be saying that they are a playoff contender. So that now means that there is a championship contender, perceived easy loss, and then 2 playoff contenders. So obviously Rams are number 1, the Cardinals are number 4. Between the Seahawks and 49ers, I actually struggle with this a little bit. I am high on the 49ers, but I'm high on the Seahawks too. I was actually one of the few people last year that was saying the Seahawks are going to be fine. I predicted the Seahawks to make the playoffs last season, and I might do the same. I am going to put the Seahawks at number 2 on this list. That's just where I have them. I think the Seahawks are a very good football team. So, yeah, that is the NFC North. Now let's move on to the final division. Wait, that is the NFC South, not the NFC North. We will now move on to the NFC North, and we'll start things off with the Chicago Bears. Now, Chicago Bears are an interesting team. One thing I don't love about the Chicago Bears is I feel like they gave too much blame to Cody Parkey. And I do kind of get it on one hand that if you lose a game off a missed kick, you do kind of want to blame just the way the missed kick went down. Although worth mentioning, it was blocked, not missed. But either way, they kind of just want to say, you know what? That's why we didn't go to the second round last year. It's not because we didn't play that game well. It's just we got unlucky. Our kicker missed a field goal. It happens. And I do kind of understand that mindset. I mean, to a degree, I do think you should say, well, we did things well. But at the same time, I don't love the mindset of making excuses. I think that's kind of a loser mentality in a lot of ways. And I think they're not really owning up to what they did wrong in that playoff game. I mean, I thought Matt Nagy actually had a terrible idea going into that game of how to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the book was out on the Eagles. They had a great front 7, but their secondary was weak. So the move is to throw a lot of deep passes down the sidelines. And I get that as a Chicago Bears team, they didn't necessarily have the personnel for it. But I did think that they should have done that quicker. I also thought that there was just the defense giving up a touchdown late in the season, or late in the game. I mean, listen, maybe this is a meatball take, but I do kind of feel like if you're going to be an elite defense, you can't be giving up touchdowns late that allows another team to take the lead. The elite level defense. The 86 Bears or 85 Bears, the 85 Bears, they're not going to give up a touchdown late in the game when they're up 5. The 2002 Bucks don't give up a touchdown in that situation, or the 2000 Ravens. You want to be in that conversation with those defenses, well then don't give up a touchdown there. Again, kind of a meatball-y take. But anyways, how do I think they will be in 2019? I think they should still be pretty good. Again, they didn't have a first-round pick, so that does kind of worry you to a degree. Although they did still add David Montgomery through the draft, who a lot of people are very high on. I think that their running back situation is now good with both David Montgomery and also Tariq Cohen. Still not sold on the wide receiving core, and I am still not sold on Mitchell Trubisky. I think Mitchell Trubisky, at times, has shown a lot of talent. Part of it, with me, for Mitchell Trubisky, is simply just upstairs. It seems like he makes some really poor reads sometimes. But if he can fix that, and he's a young player, so that's probably why. But if he can kind of take the next step forward, this could be a team that could not just contend for the playoffs, but can contend for a Super Bowl berth. They also have probably the best defense in the league. I mean, I would have to go through it a little bit, but if they don't have the best defense in the league, they have one of the best defenses in the league, and they did have the best defense in the league last year. So, I like the Bears, but honestly, I am a little bit concerned just about their quarterback position. I really am. I think that I'm struggling in between championship contender and playoff contender, but you know what? If you're struggling in the most position, if you have a maybe not great quarterback, which is the most important position in football, I don't think. Well, I mean, I'll give them a championship contender. I was gonna not because of Trubisky, but I think that even with Trubisky, they won 12 games last year. I think Trubisky will get better. I'm gonna put them as a championship contender. So how about that, Chicago Bears fans who say I always bash on your team? I do not. I think you're going to be a championship contender next year. And now moving on to a team that I actually praise a lot more than a lot of other people do. That is the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions, they're just one of those teams that for some reason everyone, I think it's just the fact that they're the Lions. They've been bad for so long. People just expect them to continue to be bad. People, I think, want Matt Patricia to be bad. But I like this roster. They have a very good roster. It all starts with Stafford, a better quarterback in this league, in my opinion, the 11th best quarterback in the league. That's where I put him at in my top 40 quarterback rankings. If you saw my video with Luke G's field review, we talked about how we do feel like the Lions' offensive weapons are underrated. I do think that their offensive line is solid. I think that their secondary is suspect, but their run defense is really good. I think they're a top 5 run defense, but maybe a bottom 10 secondary. I mean, with the exception of Darius Slay, they got some concerns there. So I really like this Lions team, and I will say that this Lions team is going to, how about this, contend for a playoff spot. That's right. They are a playoff contender, in my opinion. And now let's move on to the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers, I mean, for one thing, in my opinion, best quarterback in the league, Aaron Rodgers. He is very good. I think that their wide receiving grouping is okay. I mean, Devontae Adams is Devontae Adams. He's a true number 1 receiver. We all know it. Their running back, just in fairness, I was actually a little bit lower on Devontae Adams than a lot of people were, and so I was wrong about that, because he clearly is a true number 1 receiver. So just to own up to some of my mistakes as well. That is true. And, that's also something that should be mentioned about these types of videos, is that I'm making predictions, but I'm going to make a ton of things wrong. That's kind of the whole point of making predictions, is you make some things wrong and some things right. I mean, the real fun in a prediction show isn't after the fact looking and seeing if you got it right. It's just during the fact, so you can also make your predictions and we can talk about things as of now. I wouldn't say that you were dumb for thinking the Vikings were going to make the playoffs last year. Although I would say you were dumb if you thought that a really bad team that was clearly going to be bad was going to make the playoffs last year and had no other reasoning other than you like their uniforms or something like that. So yeah, in terms of the Green Bay Packers, I would say Aaron Rodgers is number 1. In terms of quarterbacks, I think that their wide receiving grouping is okay. I think their running back situation could be really good, especially with a new system that likes to run the ball a lot. Aaron Jones, you could see Aaron Jones being a 1,000-yard rusher this year. I could definitely see that happening. And their O-line is good. Top 10 O-line. And I also think that their defense is kind of solid all around. Their defense maybe could lack some elite talent, but they have some good talent. So the Packers, for my money, I think this is another team that should be contending for the playoffs. I'm not quite sure I would put them in championship contender, but I think they should be competing for the playoffs. Moving on to the 4th and final team of the NFC South, and of the whole NFC actually, is going to be the Minnesota Vikings. And this is one of those teams that, for whatever reason, the football gods hate. I mean, there is nothing the Minnesota Vikings can do that'll make people, like, for whatever reason, no matter what they do, the football gods hate them. I mean, just think about 2 years ago, they have the Minnesota Miracle, everyone goes crazy, and then they get blown out by the Eagles when the next game would have been the Super Bowl in their home stadium. I mean, how cool would that have been? But it couldn't happen. Of course, they've had a million missed field goals in the playoffs. That's just the Vikings' way. And even last year, Kirk Cousins comes to town, but that doesn't end up working out the way they would have hoped, even though Kirk Cousins actually played pretty well. And I think he'll play pretty well this next year as well. They have good receivers. I like Dalvin Cook a lot. And I like Kyle Rudolph. Their offensive line is a little bit shaky. While I do love Garrett Bradbury, I think he's going to be a great center. He's also a center. And so, how much is a center really going to be able to save your entire offensive line? I just don't know. Their secondary and just their defense as a whole is very good. Harrison Smith. I always try to call Harrison Smith Harrison Barnes for some reason. I don't know why. But Harrison Smith, one of the better safeties, just period. He's fantastic. Their defense is good. Their offense is good. Their quarterback is good. Their head coach is good. So they're the Vikings, so they'll probably make sure they don't win. But again, I see nothing wrong with this team. And so on paper, I'm going to give them I see something wrong with their team. Their offensive line could be a little bit better. But on paper, I mean, this is still a really good team. I am conflicted between playoff contenders and championship contenders. I actually am. But I think I will go playoff contenders. However, I'm still going to put them at number 2 in their division. So I will say that the Bears are number 1 in their division. The Vikings are number 2. I am going to go Packers and then Lions, which is crazy that I think the Lions are the 4th team in their division. But that's just kind of the way I see it right now. I mean, the Lions are very good, but they might just be a year away. Whereas I see the Packers are kind of more ready to be good now. I think the Lions will be more ready to be good next year, in my opinion. But they're both good teams. Moving on to the AFC now, I think the Bills, it all starts with Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen is good, but he is also very young. And also, there's just not a lot of talent around them. Their offensive line isn't putrid, but it's also not great. And he has a lack of weapons. I'm not really sure who's going to be their running back and try to get a lot of carries next year. But either way, I'm not really too excited about that if I was a Buffalo Bills fan. Tight end is okay. Wide receiver is okay. But neither one of those are exactly things you would write home about. Their defense is good. I like their defense a lot. But as a whole, there's just so many question marks. I feel bad for Josh Allen just simply because he doesn't have a ton of talent around them. So unless he turns into the next coming of Peyton Manning, which is unlikely in his second season, I will have to say that the Bills will probably be competent losers. I think that their defense is good enough to keep them in some games. I think that Josh Allen is good enough to win them some games. I don't think that their defense and Josh Allen are good enough to be winning them games consistently, so that's why I have them as competent losers. And from that point, we'll move on to the Patriots, who of course are an easy perceived W win. Of course, they're just atrocious. No, they're not. Patriots are fantastic. We all know it. Patriots are an interesting team going into this next season because they lost some talent. I mean, that has to be mentioned. They lost some talent. Trey Flowers has been a huge piece of that defense for quite some time, and I do think their front seven could falter from that. They still have a great secondary, but I do think that it could hurt them to lose Trey Flowers. And they also lost Trent Brown. However, they have Isaac Wynn, who should fill in for him. I'm not really too worried about their left tackle position. Honestly, their offensive line has been great for a while now. Tight end is now a position of weakness for the Patriots, despite it being a position of an elite strength for quite some time with Gronkowski out there. Gronkowski is no longer here, so that is a weakness for them. I like their running back, and obviously, their running back grouping. It's not just Sonny Michel. They have plenty of guys who can jump in and be successful. And of course, there's Tom Brady, who is still Tom Brady. I'm not worried about him. I know he's older. I don't care. He's going to be good until maybe a couple more years from now, I think. Tom Brady is good, and it's part of the system. He doesn't have to throw the ball downfield. Just him being an intelligent player adds so much value to the Patriots that they're always going to be able to score points with Tom Brady as a quarterback. Even if Tom Brady couldn't throw, they would still probably score some points. So, again, wide receiving grouping, probably their biggest weakness, I would say. Either that or tight end, so that's not great for Tom Brady. But they're kind of just a run-heavy team now anyways. So, how much will that hurt them? It'll hurt them some. How much will it hurt them a ton? I don't know. So, that's kind of where I see the Patriots. Obviously, they're a championship contender. They could have high schoolers out there, and if Bill Belichick's the coach, I'm going to say they're a championship contender. They're the Patriots. Moving on to the Miami Dolphins. Well, we have one end of the spectrum, and now we have another end of the spectrum. I mean, listen, I'm not going to beat them up too much. They're rebuilding this year. We all know it. Their offensive line was debatably the worst in the league already, and then they lost maybe their best player on the offensive line in Laramie Tunsil. So, they're clearly rebuilding this year. I think that's a fine thing. Their wide receiving grouping is bad. Their tight end grouping is bad. Their running back grouping is bad. Their defense has some pieces on it, but other than that, Fist Magic is really going to have to go a long way for the Dolphins to actually have some optimism going into this season. Again, I'm not going to beat them up too much. They're a rebuilding team, and that's totally fine. Rebuilding makes a lot of sense in the NFL, and it's something that we're seeing a lot of teams do more and more. I think the Oakland Raiders kind of started the trend to a degree. I mean, listen, teams have always kind of rebuilt, but it seems like for the longest time, culture in football is you try to just be good every year. That's what you have to do. But if you could rebuild for a couple years and then be good, that's how you can turn into just being a potential playoff team into a potential championship team. It's also tough because I think general managers and head coaches, they just don't want to rebuild. They don't want to have to go through that because you only have a couple of years to actually be successful. If I'm a Dolphins fan going into this next season, really probably Dolphins or Cardinals, I'm probably not too optimistic going into this season. However, I think with the Dolphins at least, maybe around week 8 or 9 or so, they probably will be sitting there and saying, well, hey, things might not have gone too well for us this season, but there are about 5 or 6 teams that I would definitely much rather not be than, I'd much rather be a Dolphins fan than those 5 or 6 teams. So I don't love the Dolphins this year, but I like what they're doing for the future to try to bottom out and be good in 2020. They could potentially get Tua or whichever quarterback they decide they want this season. So, yeah, we get it. They're a perceived easy W. Moving on to the Jets. Well, the Jets are interesting. I mean, they definitely added some pieces. Obviously, most notably probably C.J. Mosley and Le'Veon Bell, two very good players. I think Sam Darnold could see a big jump this next year, but there still are some concerns I have with this team. Despite the fact that I think they're a good defense, I think their offensive line is bad. I think their offensive line is maybe bottom 5 in the league. I do not think that Le'Veon Bell can save that offensive line. I think they will struggle to a large degree. I really like Sam Darnold, but who's he going to be throwing to? I mean, you have Robbie Anderson, but as a whole, there's too many problems I have with this Jets team, especially on offense around Sam Darnold, who I still really like. I think Darnold's a really talented player. I think he's getting unfairly criticized to Baker Mayfield, despite the fact that I think Baker Mayfield has actually been drafted into a pretty great situation, which is weird to say about a Browns quarterback. You know, usually Browns quarterbacks, that's the worst situation to get brought into. I think Baker Mayfield actually got brought into a pretty good situation. Sam Darnold did not. Sam Darnold has a bad wide receiving grouping outside of Robbie Anderson. They have a bad offensive line, not the best tight end grouping, and so he's just. And last year they didn't really have a great running game, although this year they have Le'Veon Bell. So I think the Jets are going to be competent losers, which is actually kind of interesting because now I actually have in 4 tiers in each of this division. I have one team in each of those tiers. I have the Jets as competent losers. I have the Dolphins as a perceived ECW. I have the Patriots as championship contenders. And never mind me. I'm an idiot. The Bills and the Jets are both going to be competent losers. I will say, well, now that's interesting. So, Bills and Jets, who do I think should be ahead? Well, I'll say the Jets ahead of the Bills. I'll go 1 Patriots, Jets 2, Bills 3, and then I'll go Dolphins 4. Because I actually think both these defenses are fine, so it's tough to say. But the Jets at least have a good running back alongside a good quarterback. I think the Bills, the running game is going to be a little shaky, and I do think the running game still matters in today's NFL. So that's what I have. Let's move on to another division, and that'll be the division that stars the Denver Broncos. Okay, maybe that's not the first team everyone thinks of when you talk about the AFC West, but hey, Denver Broncos, I think they're a good team. So let's just talk about it. Several things that are interesting, really on defense. I think this defense has a chance to be one of the best defenses in the league. This is actually a defense that I drafted in fantasy with my second to last pick. I've got the Denver Broncos defense because I think Bradley Chubb on one side, Von Miller on the other, they're going to get some sacks, they're going to get some stripped fumbles, and they're going to disrupt some plays that are going to result in interceptions. I truly believe that. And they have a good secondary. So this Denver Broncos defense, I mean, honestly, it's not, I'm not going to quite go as far as to say it's as good as they were when they won the Super Bowl, but it's not that far off. I mean, they have a lot of talent on the defensive side of the football. And moving on to the offensive side of the football, there's not a huge lack of talent there either. I mean, the offensive line, top tier, it's not great, but it's above average, I would say, which is good. The tight end situation is interesting, especially with Noah Fant getting drafted. Probably will take him a year or two to develop, but that's fine. You're probably not going to win the Super Bowl this year anyways. You also have a good running back situation with both Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay, two guys who I really like. Lindsay, who I love. Wide receiving grouping, it's kind of whatever. And then the quarterback position, that's probably the most interesting position in my opinion. Because on one hand, yes, there's elite dragon Joe Flacco, who is, I love Joe Flacco, but I don't know how well he'll be in terms of being a starting level quarterback. But hey, if you look at his numbers, this is actually a really interesting thing about Joe Flacco. If you look at his numbers, he's not that far off last year than where he was when he was actually making the playoffs consistently and winning Super Bowls. He's never been a fantastic regular season quarterback. He's always been the type of guy who turns it on in the playoffs, and he's had one of the best playoff runs in NFL history. So if the Broncos can just get Flacco to the playoffs, they could have some success. And of course, we don't even know if Flacco's going to be their starter next year. They might go with Drew Lock, who they drafted in the second round. So it's very interesting to see how the Broncos will go, but I love this defense so much. I'm actually going to put them as a playoff contender. That's how I feel about them. I mean, listen, I think they have a great defense. I think that they have the pieces are there on offense that they can be a run-heavy team, and then Joe Flacco can just do his job. So this is a great situation for Flacco. I think Flacco's got to be ecstatic about being a Denver Bronco at this point. At least I would be. So I like this Denver Broncos team a lot, and that's why I have them there. And then moving on from them, we have the Kansas City Chiefs, a team that was oh so close, maybe just a coin flip away from making the Super Bowl last year. And I really like this team. I mean, their offense is ridiculous. We all know it. You got Patrick Mahomes, you got Tyreek Hill, you have Travis Kelce. I mean, that is a three-headed monster if I've ever seen one. Their running game is a little bit of a question mark now that they don't have Kareem Hunt, but they did just get LaShawn McCoy, who, again, we'll have to see how much gas he has left in the tank, but they also have Damian Williams, who I actually really like and think is very underrated. So I like their offense a lot. Offensive line is fine. Nothing to write home about, but it's fine. And then they have so much talent. And then they have probably the number one guy I would choose if I'm starting a franchise in Patrick Mahomes. You give me one pick to take any player on any team, I'm taking Patrick Mahomes just because of age and also talent. So, obviously on offense, they're going to be fine. Their defense is where we have some concerns. Their defense is not that great. It was not very good last year. It's doesn't appear to be great this year. Although they did make some improvements. I think the Tyrann Mathieu move, to me, I don't care what anyone says, I think they added Tyrann Mathieu simply because they feel like he can fit against the Patriots and he can help them beat the Patriots. I think that was a move with the Patriots in mind. This is a guy who can play strong, he can play free, that was really something they needed last year, was kind of a defensive back with some versatility. Now they have one in Mathieu, and that can go a long way in my opinion. So that's what I like about the Chiefs' defense. I do think Mathieu can have a huge impact. I still like the Chiefs. They're championship contenders, of course. I think they could be very good next year. And there's also the scary thought of what if Patrick Mahomes gets better? I think we're all kind of expecting some regression. Who knows? Maybe we'll look back at this year and say, man, Patrick Mahomes was terrible that year. Only 50 touchdowns. Probably not. But hey, it's possible. He could get better. That is a very real thing. But anyways, let's move on to the Oakland Raiders. This Oakland Raiders team is, I'll say right now, they're going to be competent losers in my tier, but they're going to be the most fun competent losers that I have that will happen next year. I think Derek Carr is good. I put him at number 15 in my top 40 quarterback rankings list. I think they have some good wide receivers now, most specifically adding debatably the best receiver in the game, and Antonio Brown. I think that their running game should be really good. I think Josh Jacobs, that's the guy who, again, I know no one cares about fantasy, but just so you know how I feel about these guys, Jacobs was somebody I made sure I went out and got in fantasy because I think they're going to just have him run the ball a ton. I really like Josh Jacobs a lot. The tight end situation is a mess after losing Jared Cook, but their offensive line is a question mark. Not really a mess, but a question mark. They have some good pieces, but I think Colton Miller at left tackle is really going to be the key thing that holds this team together. If Colton Miller does what he does last season, which is not play football very well, they could be in trouble. I think he actually has some talent. He really struggled a lot of times in the mental game, and you could blame Tom Cable for that. So who knows, maybe adding someone like Trent Brown, who was a very good tackle for New England last year, very smart tackle, could he maybe help out Colton Miller and sort of just let him know what to do? Maybe he could, maybe he couldn't, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. And also, defense. The defense still needs some work. That's just, I don't think that their rookies will save them in 1 year. Rookies tend to take time to develop. So I think that the Raiders they're in a rebuild right now. I think they'll be better this year. I think they'll be competent losers, whereas last year they definitely were a team that you expected to just beat. So I think they will be okay this year. I definitely think that this is kind of similar to the Bucs, kind of similar to who the Broncos were last year. They'll probably win some games they have no business winning, but then lose a couple games they have no business losing. That's kind of where I see the Raiders at. And now, moving on to the last team on this list, or in this division, that is the, not San Diego, but the Los Angeles Superchargers. And this might be the most loaded team in the league when healthy. One problem, they just lost Derwin James. That's going to hurt. Honestly, the only weakness this team has is their offensive line. Their offensive line is bad. I mean, There's no getting around that. Their offensive line is not very good. But other than that, this is a team that is debatably top 5 or 10 in every other position grouping. I mean, you got Philip Lindsay. You got Philip Rivers. You have a tremendous wide receiving core. You have, even if Melvin Gordon doesn't play, you still have Austin Eckler and Josh Jackson, who, again, that's the type of guy who I am saying keep an eye out for. Again, I'm not sure how many carries he'll get or how much bulk stats he'll get, but I think he's a really talented player despite being a 7th round pick. Hunter Henry, when healthy, can be very effective. Their secondary, when healthy, can be very good, but again, Derwin James, that's definitely going to be a loss. Hopefully he'll be back sooner rather than later. And also, their run defense, or their front 7, they maybe have the best defensive line in the league. Linebacker, maybe a little bit of question marks, but defensive line, maybe the best defensive line in the league. So this is a loaded team, but with a few holes in it. So I still say they're a championship contender. That's my opinion on them. So you have in that division, I will go up and check before just saying it this time, you have 2 championship contenders. You have a team that I think is going to be a playoff contender in the Denver Broncos, and a team that I think is going to be okay in the Oakland Raiders. So Raiders are 4, Broncos are 3. I think the Chargers are 2, and the Chiefs are 1. Just because I still think games are largely won through the trenches. While the Chargers have a great defensive line, they do not have a great offensive line. I think that matters a lot. I would take the better team. I would personally take a team with a better offensive line over a better defensive line. So that's why I have the Chiefs at number 1. But honestly, you could flip that and I wouldn't be surprised. If the Chargers win that division, I would not be surprised at all. I really wouldn't. So that's what I have that division. And now let's move on to the AFC North. And this is a very fun division to talk about. I mean, we'll start things off with the Bengals, simply because, I mean, they're clearly the team that stands out. They're sort of rebuilding more so, whereas the other 3 teams are really trying to compete. But I'm also one of those guys where I'm saying, hey, don't sleep on the Bengals. Really don't, because this is a team that was actually pretty competent last year before Andy Dalton went down, and they could potentially maybe be a playoff contender. I don't know. But, Andy Dalton is good. The key thing that the key reason why I'm actually going to put them in as competent losers instead of playoff contenders is just because of off-season injuries. I mean, AJ Green going down hurts. I know that he won't necessarily be out for the whole season, but I still think that hurts them. And also just losing their first-round pick, the tackle, that's going to hurt them as well. So that's kind of why and their offensive line was already a position of weakness. I like Tyler Eifert, but he can't stay healthy. I love Joe Mixon, but as a whole, I think that there's a lot of flaws in that offensive line. So how much will he actually be able to really help them? It's kind of hard to say. In terms of their defense, I think their defense is fine. I like their secondary better than the run defense, but as a whole, I think they're competent losers. That's just where I have them right now. And I also think they're just in a tough division, so that's going to hurt them, in my opinion. After Cincinnati, there really is the big 3, the 3 teams in that division. With the Cleveland Browns, you have the Baltimore Ravens, and you have the Pittsburgh Steelers, all 3, which are teams that some people are saying could be playoff teams. Some people are even saying these could be potential championship teams. They're 3 very, very talented teams. They have a lot of talent on them, and they all have kind of a different mindset in a lot of ways. We'll start things off with the Steelers. The Steelers, they're kind of all offense to a degree. And I shouldn't say all offense because they do have talent on their defense as well. But their offense is definitely where they shine. Obviously, Ben Roethlisberger, we all know about him. They also, I do think, have a good receiving core. And it is the kind of thing where it's like, at this point, I just trust the Steelers. Whatever receivers they put out there, those receivers are going to be good. Running back, you got James Conner. Vance McDonald, I think, will be a fine tight end. And their O-line, a top 5 offensive line in the league, in my opinion. They could even be, you could make an argument for them being the best offensive line in the league. They're very good. Their secondary is definitely a concern of mine. I think that adding Devin Bush should help a lot, but their secondary is definitely a concern of mine. So, for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think because of their secondary, I'm going to put them at playoff contender, not championship contender. That's where I have the Steelers. And then let's simply move on to, let's go with the Baltimore Ravens next. The Ravens are another interesting team. Again, the Ravens are another one of those teams that are very unlike a lot of other teams in the league. I mean, even on offense and on defense, both of the way that they go about things are very different. We'll start things on defense, just because the Baltimore Ravens, they've always seemingly had a great defense. And really, the way that their defense is designed, I actually find very interesting because many players or many coaches would tell you the way you build a defense is simply by having a good front seven, and then you want to have secondary players that can just do their part. That's the way a lot of teams do it. Well, not the Baltimore Ravens. They have, I think, not even probably. I think they definitely have the best secondary in the league. I think that their secondary is elite. I think that their run defense or in the front seven is fine. I don't think that it's. I would still say it's borderline top 10, but I think it's good. And so when you have a good front seven and an elite secondary, well, you still have to get pressure. So one way you can do that is just by blitzing a lot, and that's what Baltimore does. They blitz a lot, and they have probably the best secondary in the league, which really helps their defense and just helps them get pressure, but they also trust their corners and their safeties to win their one-on-one matchups. So that's what's really interesting about the Ravens' defense. And of course, their offense has been talked to death. I mean, Lamar Jackson, everyone keeps talking about, will he be able to throw the ball? I think he will. I mean, I think he's shown enough that he can throw the ball. He played very well in the fourth quarter against the Chargers once they realized, oh, hey, maybe this running situation isn't working. We need to try something different. I think actually the main reason they lost that game was because they didn't make that adjustment quick enough. I think that was a huge factor. However, while I do like Lamar Jackson, and I actually think their O-line's pretty solid, they have some good tight ends. The worry is definitely in the wide receiving grouping. I think that, they did just draft Hollywood Brown. But again, it's a rookie. How much faith are you really going to have in a rookie? I just don't know. I think he'll be good, but we never know. In the running back situation, there might not be a lot of big names, but one guy who I really think is going to be a big contributor this season is a guy named Justice Hill. They drafted him in the 4th round. I think this guy is electric. I made a video about him. I think this guy could easily be a starting level talent. I think he's very good. So that's kind of the Baltimore Ravens. Again, I mean, part of me wants to put them in championship contender. I will not. I will put them as a playoff contender as well. So that's where I have the Ravens and also the Steelers. And now let's move over to the Cleveland Browns. And this is the team that's probably made either them or the Giants for the wrong reasons have made the most noise this offseason. Browns made the noise for the right reasons. Giants have made the noise for the wrong reasons. I think it all starts with Baker Mayfield, who, listen, there's some people that are just going to criticize Baker Mayfield because they want to criticize Baker Mayfield. That is absolutely a thing that is happening. And so I am not in that camp. I think people will look for whatever reason they can to say that he's not very good. I don't do that. I don't mind his personality at all. I think personality means very little when it actually comes to playing football. So I don't really talk about I don't talk about anybody's personality. I mean, I didn't criticize Kareem Hunt, not because I don't think what he did was wrong, but just because I say I'm not in the business of trying to decide who's a good person and who isn't. Baker, you can do whatever you want. I don't really care. However, in terms of on the football field, there are some valid criticisms to have about Baker and this Browns team. I think I've already explained a lot of my criticisms of Baker in my Baker Mayfield video. I said that I like a lot of throws he makes. He's clearly a great talent. He sometimes thinks that he can make too many throws. Sometimes he thinks that he can fit a ball through a tight window that he really shouldn't be throwing. Maybe there's something else open. Probably should take a check down or something. There are situations like that. So, yeah, that's kind of my criticism of Baker Mayfield, but I still think he's very good. And at the worst, he's going to be a mediocre quarterback next year. He's still so young. He's 24 years old. I mean, we got to kind of lower expectations with these younger quarterbacks to a degree. However, there is a lot of talent surrounding him. I mean, Odell, Jarvis Landry, that's obviously been talked about to death. Also, David Njoku, I'm kind of just waiting for him to have that breakout season. I mean, just looking at the guy, he's an athletic freak, but he still hasn't had that breakout season, really. He's still yet to show that, okay, this guy can be who we thought he was going to be when he was drafted. Really, his problem is he can't catch, which is it's tough when you're a receiving tight end who can't catch. That makes things difficult. But again, he's another guy who's young, and if he takes that next step forward, that could be a huge benefit. And of course, in the backfield, you got Nick Chubb, and you also have Kareem Hunt, who is coming back. So offensively, and even their O-line, people have been talking about how their O-line is terrible. Their O-line's not terrible. It could be better. There's definitely some holes they need patched up, but it's not terrible. It's maybe a bottom 10 offensive line, but I wouldn't say it's like a bottom 5 offensive line or anything. So it's good enough that you can work with it. So I'm not really too in that camp. In terms of their defense, I think that their front four is looking just electric. I mean, I truly think Myles Garrett is just a complete monster. I don't know why he's not getting talked about more. He was so great last year, and he seemingly, in the preseason, has been getting even better. Who knows if he actually will get better, but he's looking really good. And then in their secondary is actually where I have some concerns. Mostly just because I don't trust their safeties. Like, I really do think that losing Jabril Peppers will hurt them. I think that kind of, for whatever reason, the narrative surrounding the Odell Beckham trade was that the Browns fleeced the Giants. But I didn't see it that way at all. I thought the Browns gave up fair value. Now, I still like the move from the Browns' perspective because you're getting all that value in one player. So that way you can kind of work more with that. I think it was a good move for the Browns. I didn't hate the move from the Giants either. At this point, they have to rebuild. But I did like the move from the Browns' perspective, just because you're getting one good player, but there are going to be some negative ramifications for it as well. They didn't get a first-round pick to improve their team. They did lose a very good player in their secondary last year. I also do worry about them losing Greg Williams and the fact that they have a first-year head coach. Like, those things are valid concerns. I'm not sitting here and saying that they will definitely be bad. In my opinion, much like the Steelers and the Ravens, they are a playoff contender. So that means that in this division, I have 3 playoff contenders. So those are the 3 teams. Obviously, Cincinnati's going to be number 4. And then I have to figure out who's going to be 3, 2, and 1. For winning the division, I got to go with Baltimore. I mean, I know, for whatever reason, I feel like everyone's sleeping on Baltimore. I guess people think that Lamar Jackson is going to regress because running quarterbacks tend to regress. But that doesn't mean that they regress right away. I think Lamar Jackson is still going to be very good. I'm definitely a believer in Lamar Jackson. I think their defense is still good, even without Eric Weddle, even without C.J. Mosley. The whole Baltimore Ravens defense has always been built around just having good players at every position, not necessarily having... And then you'll have, a couple of elite talents. So that's kind of where the Ravens are at. I think the Ravens have the best... They have maybe the best defense in the NFL in an offense that will score points. So that's why I have them number 1 in the division. Now coming on number 2 and 3. Again, this is tough. Browns fans, I know you're going to hate me, but I'm going with Pittsburgh at number 2. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, a lot of games are won in the trenches. And when you have a team that has a top 5 offensive line versus a team that has a bottom 10 offensive line, I do think there's a difference there. I also think that the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is going to surprise some people next year. I think Devin Bush is incredibly NFL ready. I think Devin Bush is great. So that's why I have them where I have them. I do like the Browns, though, and I do think that, again, I'm putting them as a playoff contender. I think they absolutely should contend for a playoff spot. I would not be surprised at all if they make a playoff spot or win the division, but I just think they're in a tough division with 2 really good teams along with them. So, and even the Bengals are solid. So honestly, like, all 4, that might be the toughest division in the NFL. It really might be. I could easily see a scenario where 3 of those teams end up making the playoffs without a doubt. I could easily see that situation developing. So yeah, that's where I have that division. Now let's move on to I believe this is the last division. Yeah, the last division on my list, that is the AFC South. And we'll start things off with the team that won it last year. That was the Houston Texans. And yeah, it's been kind of an interesting couple of minutes for the Houston Texans. But let's start off with the positives. The positives, without a doubt, Deshaun Watson. I put him at number 8 in my top 40 quarterback rankings. He's a fantastic young quarterback. I even said in my Deshaun Watson video that there's one player that I would rather have over Deshaun Watson. If I'm doing a draft, kind of what I said about Patrick Mahomes, if I'm doing a draft where I can pick any player I want, I would pick Patrick Mahomes number 1, and I would pick Deshaun Watson number 2. That's how high I am on him. And they've got some great receivers. I mean, obviously, we all know about DeAndre Hopkins, but you got Will Fuller, you now have Kenny Stills, you have some guys that can make some plays. Their running game situation is a bit of a concern, especially because they don't have the greatest offensive line. They did just add Laramie Tunsil. They gave up a lot for him, but hey, I mean, that's not going to affect them until next year. This year, that's just an immediate upgrade. Their offensive line was probably in conversation for the worst in the NFL last year, so we'll have to see how much adding Tunsil can help them. Let's hope he does. I also think that their running game is just... They have some concerns. We'll just leave it at that. In terms of tight end, I personally am... one thing I heard Brett Coleman say, actually, I'm sure all of you guys, or at least a lot of you guys, know who Brett Coleman is. He mentioned that he thinks that Jordan Thomas is going to have a breakout season this year. That's the tight end for Houston. I'm kind of in the camp of, I'll believe it when I see it. I haven't seen it yet from him. I mean, he could be right. I don't know. But as of right now, I'm not going to call that a strength by any means. We'll have to wait and see with that one. in terms of their defense, I mean, their defensive front seven was great last year, and it was looking great on paper this year. But then they just lost Jadeveon and Clowney, who I do think will hurt. I don't love that move, honestly. I think it's fair to say that the Texans completely botched that move. Even if you want to sit here and say, well, they had to get rid of him, he wasn't going to hang on for next year. Why don't trade him earlier? Or just keep him on your roster and then let him walk in free agency. That's not the end of the world. Letting a guy walk in free agency, you get him for one more year. It's really not the end of the world. Their secondary is kind of mediocre, so but I still think, I should also mention, I still think their defensive front is going to be very good. It would be better with Clowney, obviously, but I still think it should be solid. And their secondary is kind of mediocre. So for the Houston Texans, again, I got a playoff contenders. I want to go championship contenders because I do love Deshaun Watson so much. But there's just too many holes on that team. I mean, they just lost Clowney, so now their defensive front is not going to be as good. They also don't have a great tight end situation unless Jordan Thomas does break out. They don't have a great running back situation. And even though they added Tunsil, I still don't love that line. So, yeah, I'm going to give them playoff contenders just because I do love Deshaun Watson and their receivers and even their J.J. Watt and all the guys on their defensive side. But, yeah, that's where I have them. And now let's move on to the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, you really can't talk about the Colts without talking about the fact that they lost Andrew Luck. I mean, if this is a season preview, well, they kind of built their team around having Andrew Luck this season. I do think that they're not screwed without Luck. I think Brissett is still a very solid quarterback, but I mean, he's kind of, at least the last we saw of him, he was kind of it was a good backup, not necessarily a good starter. Again, he was young. Maybe he'll get better. I don't think they're screwed. I think this is a good team with a great offensive line situation, a great tight end situation, some receivers that can play, and Marlon Mack, he's a young and up-and-coming running back. Well, again, I'm not fully sold on him yet, but he should at least be solid. So at least on the offense, I mean, for Brissett, this is actually a great situation for Brissett. There's plenty of talent on that offensive side of the ball, but there's also no expectations. I mean, if they go 6-10 with Brissett as quarterback, that's still going to be considered a win for the Colts. I also I think while I do like their offensive pieces a lot, I am a little concerned about their defense. I think their defense is fine. I don't think their defense is great. I think it's kind of mediocre. I do really like Darius Leonard. They have some pieces, but I especially in the secondary, I'm just a little bit concerned about them. So, again, I would like to make them playoff contenders. I will not. I will be saying that they will be competent losers just because I don't think this is an elite level. I was actually a little bit low on the Colts just going into the season. I was saying they were probably going to compete for the division, not necessarily compete for a Super Bowl. And so losing your Pro Bowl quarterback, that definitely hurts. So, yeah, I would say they're competent losers as of right now. And now let's move on to another team that is, they've been kind of mediocre for a while. The Tennessee Titans, who have gone 9-7 3 straight seasons, they're kind of the anti-Jeff Fisher. Instead of going 7-9, they'll go 9-7. Ironically, Jeff Fisher almost won a Super Bowl with the Titans. But anyways, yeah, so this is an interesting situation. I mean, for one thing, they did just add Ryan Tannehill to be Marcus Mariota's backup, which could work. I mean, Mariota, that has been a problem with him, is he's been hurt. The receiving situation could be okay. I'm still waiting on Corey Davis to take that next step in a lot of ways. I think we kind of all are. But it could work out. I like their running back situation a lot, actually. I think Derrick Henry could surprise some people this next year. And also, Deion Lewis is a good player. I mean, if you watched him play, he can still play. He didn't get as many touches last year, and also just not playing in the New England system, you are going to get less yards per carry and things like that. But he can still play. They still have debatably a top 5 offensive line in the league, although at times it did look not great last year. It's the kind of thing where it's like the talent level should be playing better than what actually it is performing at. It's kind of weird. But either way, I like their offense as a whole. Also, Delaney Walker is good. I like their offense as a whole. I think I'm still waiting on Mariota to really improve. I'm kind of worried that this could be kind of what Mariota is, which is he's kind of inconsistent, but he's not inconsistent. I've talked about this before. He's not inconsistent in the way that a Jameis Winston is inconsistent, where he'll throw for 400 yards one week and then he'll throw for 5 interceptions the next. Mariota's the kind of inconsistent where it's like his statistics actually won't change that much week to week, but you can definitely tell watching the game he's missing more throws or he's doing certain things just because it's a system that doesn't rely on Mariota. But either way, it's a system that doesn't rely on Mariota, and so I think they can definitely have some success on offense. And I think their defense is one of the most fun defenses to watch. It's a defense without really any holes in it, and so that's why I think the Titans will contend for the playoffs. Even though I don't love their quarterback situation, I see this as a team with no real weaknesses. Even the quarterback situation, I want to consider a weakness. It's maybe not a strength, but it's not a weakness either. And so, again, I think that maybe trying to get to, trying to beat some good teams, you can run into some trouble if you don't have enough, actual strengths. And I do think that it is kind of a problem with the Titans. However, I do think that they can at least beat up on bad teams because they don't have many weaknesses. So, I will say Titans will contend for the playoffs. And now we have the last team, which is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, the Jaguars went out and added Nick Foles. In my opinion, I put him at 17 in the top 40 quarterback rankings. Nick Foles is good. I mean, there's no doubt about it. This is the guy who he clearly can play in the big games. He's won a Super Bowl and played lights out in both the NFC Championship game and also the Super Bowl. I mean, let's be honest. If Nick Foles doesn't play in that Super Bowl, the Eagles probably don't win. Or if Nick Foles plays how he typically plays in that Super Bowl, then they might even get blown out in that game. He was great for the Philadelphia Eagles. However, coming over to the Jaguars, the Jaguars have a lot of talent on defense. They do not have a lot of talent on offense, especially, surrounding Nick Foles. The wide receiving grouping is what I'm worried about. I know people are excited about D.D. Westbrook. I'm kind of like, I'll believe it when I see it. Their running game, I am not sold on Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette has at times looked good, but he has yet to put it together consistently, and so, again, it's kind of one of those things. I'll believe it when I see it. Their offensive line is below average. It's not a mess, but it's below average, and tight ends are nothing to write home about. I do really like their defense. I think that adding Josh Allen in the draft to get him on defense, that is just, to me, that was a steal. That was the steal of the draft. I think they got a top 3 talent with the 7th overall pick. I know it's not necessarily a position of need, but hey, sometimes you gotta just take what's been given to you. You have a great talent right in front of you, pick them up. Their secondary is great too. Really, their defense as a whole is going to win them some football games, and then it looks like the mindset is that they'll just hope Nick Foles can just kind of put up enough points, and then their defense can do the rest. It's possible. It could work out. I personally would feel more confident about a team that has, less holes on their offensive side of the ball. And so for that reason, I will say that they will contend for the playoffs, not contend for a championship. But I could be wrong. So as of right now, I have the Colts are clearly number 4 then. And then the Titans, Jaguars, and Texans all are the teams that I could be seeing. They're all teams that I could see potentially winning the division. For me, I think I'm going to go number 3. I'll go 4 through 1 this time. I'll say that obviously Colts are number 4. For number 3, I'm going to say that the Texans are going to be there. And the simple reason for that is just because they have too many holes in the roster. Actually, maybe I'm conflicted, because I really like Deshaun Watson a lot. But I don't know if he's going to be enough to carry that team. And especially losing Clowney. They did just add Tunsil, but I'm still not sold on their line. I don't love their running game. I think Deshaun Watson statistically will probably have a career year. But I don't think that'll matter too much. I think Texans get 3. So now we have the Titans and Jaguars. And, you know what? I'll go Titans number 1. I think Titans will win the division. I know that's not something that a lot of people would say. But listen, this is the team that has no real flaws. And I think they're playing in a weaker division. I think that the Colts won't be great next year. They'll be competent, but not great. I think that, and plus, really, they're the biggest winners of Andrew Luck retiring. Because they never beat Andrew Luck. They never once beat Andrew Luck in all the years they played against him. So that's definitely a huge benefit for them. So I'll say Titans win it. I think the Jaguars, it could be a tight race. I could see Jacksonville. I could easily see Houston. And I don't think it's out of the question that the Colts could, but it seems unlikely. So that's who I have. That's what I have right there. Now let's move on to the awards. Let's have some fun. Let's say, who do I think is going to win the awards for, every position? We'll start things off with Coach of the Year. I will say Coach of the Year is going to be Vic Fangio. I think Vic Fangio is going to be the guy simply because there's no expectations for Denver. And that's really what winning coach of the year is. It's not necessarily actually being the best coach. It's more so just exceeding expectations the most and being a team that nobody expected you to do well. Then when that team does well, typically the coach of the year will be that coach. I mean, that's how Jason Garrett won a coach of the year a couple years ago. Matt Nagy last year. Matt Nagy was great, but there's no doubt about it. He wasn't better than Bill Belichick or Andy Reid. He just exceeded expectations. So I think Vic Fangio will exceed expectations with Denver. And so, that's why I have him where I have him. Moving on to Defensive Rookie of the Year, I'm going to say Josh Allen is going to win it. I know some people will be saying, well, wait a second, what about Williams? What about Boza? Those guys are both great, but I think Josh Allen is just more NFL ready as of today. I think this guy is going to have double-digit sacks, and plus I think he's an edge rusher. That's where he makes his money, and so I think he'll put up more impressive stats that'll get the voters to look at him a little bit more closely. So that's why I have him at Defensive Rookie of the Year. And my Offensive Rookie of the Year, I'm going to say another Josh, and that is going to be Josh Jacobs, the running back that Oakland selected in the first round. I'm picking him for a couple of reasons. For one reason, just running backs tend to burst onto the scenes in a way that other positions don't. I also think that with the Oakland Raiders, the John Gruden system relies on them running the ball a lot. So Josh Jacobs is probably going to get a lot of touches. And then, so that's why I think he'll be Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think he'll be the best running back in the league. Or not best running back in the league, but best rookie running back in the league. And, so that's why I have him there. For Defensive Player of the Year, I'll go Aaron Donald. I know it's the easy pick, but that's because it's the obvious pick, really. I mean, this guy had 20-plus sacks last year. So I'm not going to bet against Aaron Donald anytime soon. And for MVP, I mean, I'm kind of a little conflicted on it. There's a couple of guys that I want to give it to. Mahomes, obviously, is someone who I could see getting it. I'm not counting Drew Brees out at all because he's never won one before. Phillip Rivers, kind of the same situation where I feel like if Brees or Rivers are even in the conversation, they'll win it. I think that they have the tiebreaker of just, it'd be a career accomplishment, so to speak. But you know what? Let's have some fun with it. I'll give it to Jared Goff. Jared Goff will win the MVP just after losing in the Super Bowl. I think, I don't know why, but whatever. It doesn't matter. Who cares? So Jared Goff is my MVP. Now let's move on to... I do think Jared Goff will probably have a couple of bad games, but I think his bulk stats will be up, especially if Gurley gets less carries. So that's why I think he could actually put up a lot of stats, put up a lot of numbers, and he's already a guy who doesn't turn the ball over too much. So that's where I have him. So yeah, that's my awards. Those are my division winners. Just a quick recap. In the NFC, I have the Saints, Eagles, Rams, and Bears winning their divisions. In the AFC, I have the Patriots, Chiefs, Ravens, and Titans winning their divisions. So now we have to figure out which teams are going to win the wild cards. That's what we have to figure out now. And so, who could potentially be a wild card team? Well, I said the Chargers are one, the Broncos are one in my opinion. I think the Browns and the Steelers are both in the conversation. I think you got the Jaguars as well and the Texans. Those are all teams I could see potentially making the playoffs. The first wildcard team, I'm going to give it to the team that was the first wildcard team last year, and that's the Chargers. Listen, I could easily see this being a very similar situation to last year, where the Chargers win 12 games and end up as a wildcard team. I think that's very likely. They would probably be a division winner if it just wasn't for the Chiefs also being in their division. So, from that point, there's actually two teams that I'm considering. That's going to be Denver and Pittsburgh. I really think Denver is going to surprise some people. However, I got to go Pittsburgh. I just think that they're not going to miss the playoffs 2 years in a row under Mike Tomlin. Pittsburgh is a team that I have. So that is going to be the 6 teams that I have making the playoffs in the AFC. Now moving over to the NFC. The NFC is another very interesting one, in my opinion. So, for first thing, you do have the Cowboys. The Cowboys are definitely a team that could surprise some people. Moving over to the NFC West, there's the Seahawks and the Rams. And over in the NFC North, honestly, all 3 of these teams are teams you can make an argument for. You got the Packers, you got the Vikings, you got the Lions. Those are all teams that I could definitely see making some noise. Moving over to the NFC South, I don't really see the Bucks making the playoffs, but other than that, all 3 teams could be in conversation. You got Atlanta, specifically, that I could see doing it. So for me, I will say I'm going to give it to Minnesota and Seattle. Those will be my two playoff teams. I think too many people are sleeping on Minnesota after a disappointing season last year, but they were a win away from making the playoffs last year. I do think they improved the position of weakness in getting Garrett Bradbury. I'll say that they're going to be a wild card team. I'll say Seattle gets the first wild card spot and Minnesota gets the second wild card spot. And then I'm also going to say that the Chargers get their first wild card spot and Pittsburgh gets their second. So here's how we'll do this. We'll start from the NFC because now we got to figure out who's going to make the Super Bowl and who's going to win it. So for the NFC, I'm going to say that I have the four divisional winners once again: Saints, Eagles, Rams, Bears. I'll say that I'll say the Saints are my number one seed. Bears are number 2, so those two teams get the bye. I'll say Rams 3 and Eagles 4. So then that means that Seattle is number 5 and Minnesota is number 6. So my first matchup, Minnesota versus the Los Angeles Rams. I'll say that the Rams win that game. Minnesota gets taken out in the wild card matchup, and then Seattle, who is now number 5 seed, going up against the Eagles, who are number 4 seed. I'll say Seattle wins that game. I'll say Seattle upsets the Eagles. Now Seattle is going to go over to play the Saints, and I think that could be an interesting game. And you know what? We'll have some fun with it. I'll say Seattle wins that game as well, goes over to the NFC Championship game. And then the other two teams that are going to be playing in the divisional matchup will be the Rams and Bears. This is actually pretty significant because this was almost a matchup last year if the Bears didn't end up winning, or if a kick isn't blocked, then this would have been a matchup last year. And I'll say that the Bears win this one. So now it's Seattle versus Chicago in the conference championship, and I'll say Chicago wins. So how about that? Everyone who says that I bash on the Bears, I have them going to the Super Bowl. So there you go. Then moving over to the AFC. I don't know if anybody cares at this point, but I'm having fun with this, so we're just going to go with it. In the AFC, there's obviously the Patriots and Chiefs. Those are two teams that could be fighting out for number 1 or 2 seed. I'll say that the Chiefs end up getting number 1 seed once again. Patriots get number 2 seed. I'll say Ravens 3 seed and Titans 4 seed. So that means that the first matchup is going to be the Ravens going up against the Steelers. That would be a lot of fun. And, I had the Ravens winning the division, so I might as well just have the Ravens win that game as well. But that would be fun. Ravens-Pittsburgh, I would enjoy that. And moving over to the other wildcard matchup would be the Titans going up against the Chargers. I'll have the Chargers winning that game. So now this is actually very similar to last season in the sense that the Chargers would have a rematch against the Patriots. And you know what? I'll say this time the Chargers defeat the Patriots. They upset the Patriots in Foxborough and move on to the AFC Championship, whereas the Chiefs and Ravens play, which would also be a rematch of not a playoff game last season, but a regular season game last season. That was in that wild Patrick Mahomes game. And I'll say the Chiefs win that game. Chiefs and Chargers are in the AFC Championship game, which would be a ton of fun because they are division rivals. And I'll say this time the Chiefs finally get through and go to the Super Bowl. And then in the Super Bowl, I'll say it's the Chiefs and Bears. You can make an argument for either team. I think that it would be high-flying offense versus high-flying defense. Typically, the number 1 defense does beat the number 1 offense in the Super Bowl. That's the way it's tended to work. But I'll still say the Chiefs win this one. And the Chiefs are my pick for the Super Bowl champions over the Bears. That's how I have that going. So I'm sorry, Chiefs and Bears fans, because that definitely means that neither one of you will even come close to the Super Bowl. But that's what I have. That is my pick for and my prediction for everything that is going to happen in the 2019 season. I had fun making this. I'm sure that looking back on it in a year, people will sit here and say, wow, you were off about everything. But that's kind of half the fun of making these predictions. So let me know in the comments below. You don't have to tell me everything, but let me know who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl and who's going to lose the Super Bowl. Tell me what your Super Bowl matchup is, who's going to win and who's going to lose. Also, just let me know if you got this far. I don't really know how well. Again, I've never done a podcast before. I don't know if this is good. I don't know what I'm doing wrong or right. So feel free to let me know any sort of tips. I mean, and let's be honest, you guys totally will let me know anyways. It's not like it's tough to get opinions on the internet. But either way, hopefully this was at least listenable and something you could do while you're playing Madden or whatever. that's kind of the goal. And anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I will still be making my film breakdown, my film studies consistently, so don't worry about that. Those aren't going anywhere. Basically, my thought process was on Mondays, usually it takes about 24 to 48 hours for the all 22 footage to be released. So my thought process that if this goes well, I can make a podcast on Mondays, so that way you guys are still getting content, and those podcasts would just be recapping each week. But then on Tuesday, then I would have the all 22 footage, so then I could make my film studies and make those Tuesday through Sunday. That would be my mindset on that. So let me know if that makes sense to you guys. Let me know what your Super Bowl predictions are, and just say hi. I like to have a conversation going in the bottom of the comment section. So let me know. As always, I appreciate you guys watching, and yeah, have a good one.